And with that, I'm so excited to welcome you all here for our faculty career panel for this year's Academic April. So Academic April is something that the Career Development Office does every year. It's just a series of seminars and workshops to help all of you who are interested in pursuing faculty careers or academic careers. So today we are very excited to have four different professors in different types of faculty positions here to tell us about their roles. So we are going to get started. Before that, really quick, as the audience, if you have questions at any time, you are always welcome to drop them in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand function on Zoom, or you can just unmute yourself if you feel like there's a lull in the conversation, and ask the question verbally, whatever works best for you and whatever you are comfortable with. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our panelists to just give a super brief introduction of sort of where they are right now, their type of faculty position, and just a very brief overview of how they got there. So we are going to go just in order here. So Amanda, we will start with you, and then we will go with Michelle. So Amanda, you can take it away.
All right. Good morning. Thanks for joining. I'm Dr. Amanda Smolinski. I am, as you can see here, an assistant professor of anatomy at Rocky Vista, which is down in Parker, Colorado. So I would say my career path, how I got here, is very much sporadic, kind of all over the place. I started with my bachelor's in biology, thinking I was going to do DNA work. I did some projects on mRNA. Then I got my master's in human evolutionary biology at the University of Cambridge, looking at morphology. Then took some time off. Came back and did a PhD in integrative anatomy, which included an evolutionary component. And then wasn't quite sure where I was going to get placed, but ended up doing a teaching postdoc here at Rocky Vista that was specifically teaching. So there was no research component there, which I would say does slow down your momentum some if you're looking to open up a lab. Then I did a visiting position, which was, again, mainly teaching at a small liberal arts college in Virginia. And then got a tenure track position at another small liberal arts college outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Then switched back to med school teaching 2 years ago. Was teaching at Rowan outside of Philadelphia. And then had some friends here call me and say, hey, we're opening a new program. Do you want to come back and teach med anatomy for our nursing program? So here I am. I think I've moved like every 2 years. So if you have questions about bouncing around small liberal arts colleges, trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, I definitely have some input on that. Thanks.
All right. I guess my path has been a little more linear. I'm currently an assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh and also affiliated with the UPMC Hillman Cancer Center. And I did my PhD training at Vanderbilt. All my training's been in breast cancer research. And that's what my lab still studies now. And I did my PhD at Vanderbilt and then did my postdoc at the University of Colorado with Jen Ricker. And was able to be NIH funded throughout that whole process. I had a K99 R00 that helped me be competitive to look for faculty positions. I was on the faculty search for about a year. I started within the first year of my K99 funding and was able to delay my start here at the University of Pittsburgh after I got the offer for another year. So I was able to go through most of the K99 phase, which is 2 years. And then now, yeah, so I'm here and it's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of fun, actually. And my lab is actually celebrating its 2-year birthday, anniversary, I don't know, next week. So yeah, happy to be here.
Hello, my name is Michael Fun. I had a similar linear with some ebbs and flows, I'll say. We can talk about that. But yeah, I started my research training basically at the end of my undergraduate experience. I just volunteered in labs, and then I got really interested in research after that. So I did a master's degree at the same institution, the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. In my master's, I studied limb regeneration in tree frogs, and it was interesting and fun. So that kept me interested. And then I actually also took time off after my master's to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And I just kept, having this interest in research. And so I applied to PhD programs. And actually, currently I'm an assistant professor here in the Department of Pharmacology at CU Anschutz, but I actually also went to graduate school here. So I got my PhD here. I was in the lab of Haida Ford, and I studied breast cancer, and that's kind of been my interest since then. And then I did my postdoc at Harvard Medical School. I was actually co-mentored, which I can also talk about, in the labs of Joan Brugge and Senthil Muthuswamy. I was able to do this mostly, not mostly, but big reason why was I was able to secure NIH funding throughout, and in particular, I got a F99 K00, which is a pre to postdoc transition award. So that really allowed me to customize and really find the best situation I could have for my postdoc. So I was there for about a little over 5 years, and then I was on the faculty market for about a year as well. But I was very, very targeted with where I was trying to go, and then obviously I can talk about that as well. And then I ended up back here because it's awesome, and I can talk about that. But yeah, I just started my lab in July of 2025, so still like a baby assistant professor, expanding the lab, and I can talk about the trials and tribulations of that. So looking forward to it.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Heather Ray. I am an associate professor at Idaho State University. This is a medium, well, depending on your perspective of undergraduate universities, as far as the size, small to medium size public institution, state school. It's an R2 university. So, I have a research lab, do a good bit of teaching. So it's a good mix actually between teaching and research. And I can, talk about that type of career and doing research with undergrads, for example. So in my training, I actually, after my undergrad, I did a bunch of other things and took a good bit of time before deciding that I wanted to try research. And so I got a job as a research assistant for a couple years, and that totally, hooked me, and I loved it. So I did a master's degree at the University of Texas, San Antonio in immunology, and then went straight from my master's to my PhD at Anschutz. So I was in the CSDV program and got, fell in love with developmental biology. So that is, where I've continued in my research. So after my PhD, I did a postdoc at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. And it's my postdoc for 4 years, and then just had one cycle of being on the job market before I started here. And for funding, I had an F award, F31 as a graduate student. And then I had a fantastic postdoc fellowship, which unfortunately the NIH just axed. It was a program called ARACTA, which was a teaching and research training fellowship, which was awesome and really helped prepare me for a position that included a good bit of teaching. Yeah, I'm really distraught that they that they got rid of it. Such a great training program, but that's the funding I had. I didn't have any postdoc like research funding, so I didn't apply for F or T awards or K or anything like that. And I knew that I was very specifically focused on targeting R2 institutions, maybe PUI depending on the school. And so that was something that actually wasn't the priority, I guess, for me for this type of position. So definitely happy to talk about like if you're interested in this type of position and how to market yourself or prepare yourself, I guess, to be competitive.
Great. Yeah, thank you all so much. So with that, audience, we are going to turn it over to you. So we would love if you either would like to raise your hand or unmute yourself to ask a question, or throw something in the chat. It's really up to you now to ask the questions that you were wondering to our panelists.
Hi, I have a question, but I'm not sure if it was, I just joined because I was checking into a hotel for a conference, so I apologize if I missed the answer if this already happened. But I do have a question. Actually, I have been told repeatedly, many times by so many people that if I want to do teaching primarily and research on the side, that's basically impossible, that I have to pick one lane or the other. And I just was wondering, how realistic is this that I have heard from many people? And are there paths where I can do primarily teaching of classes with research being not the main focus? Because it seems like a lot of positions it's the other way around. Thank you.
I'll answer that. That's absolutely not the case. I think that one of the challenges, especially if you are getting your training like at a medical school, which is fantastic, but the faculty that you are primarily interacting with, they have a lens of like what a med school research focused career is like, and they maybe don't have the experience or understanding to help you figure out like what those other options are and how to get there. So I can say, like, in my department, so I'm in a broad biology department. So I'm the only developmental biologist. I've people that are studying all different kinds of things. And we all teach undergraduate courses, and we all have research labs. And I have NIH funding that there are certain types of grants that you're only eligible for if you are at a university that is a high undergraduate institution. And I have graduate students and a lot of undergraduate students that do research in my lab. So I'm research active. I go to conferences, publish papers, give a lot of great, I guess I shouldn't necessarily qualify as that is great because I'm the one giving them, but I give a lot of research opportunities to students, and it's a great mix. And so most everyone in my department currently has some sort of NIH or NSF funding, and have developed research careers, but it's also it's not as much of a requirement, I would say. Like you can there's still like a path to tenure if you are not like really highly research active and you really are a fantastic educator and you contribute to the department in other ways. So you can a little bit kind of balance of how much time you want to devote to the research, because teaching is is the requirement, right? And that's kind of our first focus, and then research goes along with that. But I very much I develop both in both ways, and I would say that even when I was on the job market and I was interviewing, and all of the universities that I interviewed with were very much in this vein. So there's a lot out there that you can develop yourself as both an educator and a researcher, but you just have to understand what there is a difference in the expectations of like what research you can get done when you're also teaching. So you're not going to do the same level of research as far as like how much you get done and how productive you are, because you have a lot of other demands on your time. But no, you don't have to choose one or the other. There's a lot of careers like this.
Just to kind of piggyback off of that, so I've had two positions that were, all of my positions have been primarily teaching, but the one tenure track job I had at a PUI, it was a small liberal arts college. I loved teaching there. I had a full course load, 4-4. And then most of the people doing research would maybe have one or two undergrads, and most of their research was done in the summer. And then tenure requirements were 2 pubs before you go up for tenure. So it was not super intense. No one had NIH funding, I don't think. But if you have, one thing I did notice was if you have momentum and you have, especially doing on the job market, they'll ask you to do a research presentation. What can you bring to this institution? And they're looking primarily for these smaller projects that you could develop over the course of several semesters with 1 or 2 students. Are you bringing data with you that someone could just do like a small, let's analyze this small thing? If you get a poster at the end of the year research conference, that's so awesome. That's the best thing we've ever heard of. No one's going to like crazy national conferences with their undergrads. But if you do, that's even better. The position I'm in now is entirely teaching. There is no tenure system, but to get promoted, I do need to have 2 pubs. So I can hang out at assistant professor for as long as I would like. But if I get some teaching research done, like if I analyze exam scores or we tried this new thing in the lab, I can get a paper on that, and that counts toward my publications for going up for promotion if I decide to do that. But I'm relatively secure here now with I can hang out at assistant and not need to do any research at all if I don't have to. So there are definitely, again, kind of echoing what Heather said, the people you're hanging out with now are the go-getters that are at the big institutions that have grad students and NIH funding. But if you look in different places for those job postings, especially primarily undergraduate institutions where the teaching will be more of the focus.
Yeah, thank you both. And thank you for that question, Skylar. I think it's important to get ahead of any of those perceptions. I think, like you guys said, absolutely, there are opportunities where you can do teaching and research. Okay, so we have a couple hands up, so I'm going to turn it over next to Meg, if you would like to ask your question. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Thanks. 2 quick questions. Dr. Oliphant, you mentioned having NIH funding for a pre to postdoc grant, an F99K00. And Dr. Ray, you mentioned having a grant, I think you said an F31 while you were a grad student. I've struggled a little bit to figure out like what grants are available and like how do you tap into those, what's the best time to tap into those. And so I'm wondering if either of you or any of you could speak to, if somebody's a graduate student, do these things. If you're coming out of or getting ready to graduate from an advanced degree like a PhD, do these things, or do these things before you're graduating to prepare for the next step. That's kind of the piece I'm fuzzy on, and if one of you could speak to that, that would be great. And I'll ask my other question later. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the question. So let's see. This is multi-part. So let's tackle the grant funding during your graduate. So I was fortunate to have a mentor and people on my thesis committee too that were very encouraging for me, or encouraging me to apply for as many grants as possible. I applied to what's really nice about Colorado is there are also a lot of smaller grants that you can start building your skills with. So there's like the Cancer League of Colorado, there's some internal grants, and these really allowed me to kind of start at least just getting in the process of how do you put a grant together? What are the type of language do you have? How do you frame your project? Things like that. And I started that very early on and was encouraged very early on to do that. So as soon as possible. I mean, even now, with the NSF craziness, like the students here are writing their first grants in the first semester, right? And so they're getting experience right away. So, in terms of timing, I think the earlier the better, because then you can keep fine tuning and keep growing as a grant writer as you go along. And then for the F99 and K00, so that is a specific timing mechanism. So you usually go for that in your 3rd and 4th year. I believe it's still the same. And that you have to be an institutional nominee, meaning that everyone from the same institution will put their proposals forward, and I believe there's a committee that will nominate one person that then can go on to apply for the grant. And so it's pretty competitive. I went for the 3rd and 4th year, and I think I got it the 2nd time, so the 4th year. And so, that third year, I was a little light on data. I got some good feedback, and that, obviously helped with, making my application much stronger the second time around. And then for the postdoc, because I had that transition where, as I mentioned, I was very, very selective of where I wanted to do my postdoc, and I took a long time. So relative to maybe some others, I took close to almost, I was probably close to 10 months of looking for a postdoc and interviewing at multiple places because I thought that was a super important decision. I could talk about why, obviously, but and so I didn't really have anything that I went for when I was trying to transition to a postdoc, although there are plenty, especially for our field for breast cancer, Michelle and I, there's a lot of foundation opportunities and things like that that will fund people going into their postdoc and then early on in their postdoc. So I think, in terms of overall getting that grant experience, right. I think it's like I mean, I've akined it to exercise. Like if you stop exercising, you will lose all your gains, right? So I treat it like that, and I do as much writing, as much grant framing, things like that, thinking about grants as much as possible, and that's really helped me along the way. And so yeah.
Yeah, I think, and it depends on the grant mechanism and what the purpose of that grant mechanism is. So, for example, anything that is strictly a pre-doctoral fellowship. So whether that's so the F31 is the one I had. So that's the NIH pre-doctoral fellowship. And those are good for like they're a specific amount of time when you get that award, you can have it for up to 3 years. So applying for it earlier in your time during your PhD is beneficial because if you wait until your fourth year to apply, then if you get it, you don't have a whole lot of time to be able to use it. And the reviewers may also see that as a negative if they're like trying to award fellowships and someone is very late in their PhD. So timing does matter. There are also other like the GRFP through NSF as Mike was mentioning, they've just changed the requirements. So you have to be a first-year graduate student to apply for that one, and that's pre-doctoral. So if you're past your first year, that's already out the window. There are other foundation pre-doctoral fellowships like American Heart. That's a big one that people apply for. So the pre-doc ones you definitely want to start earlier. And it's the same thing for like postdoc fellowships. If you want a postdoc fellowship that's just for your postdoc and not one of these transition type awards like a K99 R00, you want to start earlier rather than later so that you can make the most of that the time that they'll give you for that fellowship. And again, because you may have to write and submit and get comments back and then write again and revise and resubmit. And so the earlier the better.
Yeah, great. Okay, for time, we're going to move on. So next, Stephanie has her hand up. So Stephanie, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I have a question kind of going back to Heather mentioning that she went into her current position at an R2 level institute without any postdoc awards. I'm going on the market this fall and I've had the privilege of receiving an F, but I've been, trying my best to get a K and it's just been tough. I was wondering if any of you could speak on whether you think what your opinions are on bringing in a type of K transition award on the current job market. I know being on a medical campus, you get kind of a certain perspective on whether they're necessary or not. So I would love to hear whoever's willing to speak on that's opinion.
I can start, I guess. There were quite a few places, honestly, that I interviewed at that only considered applicants that had funding. And And oftentimes it was in like the job listing that that's what they were looking for. So that's something you might be able to keep an eye out for. But I also did a lot in how I actually found my job here. It was not posted anywhere. I reached out to everyone I knew who might be at an institution that I'd want to go to. And I said, hey, do you have a job opening? And it happened, well, in this case, like the person who was in charge of my recruitment here emailed Dr. Ricker, and then I was told, there's a position that might potentially be open at Pitt. So I think if you have an in through a network, if it's someone you know, or if it's someone that your boss knows, then you would be more highly considered at an institution where they're seeking someone who has funding. So I would definitely try to rely on that as well. And then I think there are some institutions that, may prioritize people who have funding, but if you have a track record of NIH funding and you have some good publications, you might also be a strong applicant. So it's a bit of a, I don't know, game you have to play, but I don't know. My approach was just to apply to as many things that seemed like a good fit as possible and see what happened, to be honest.
Yeah, I totally echo what Michelle was saying. One of the things that I hope everyone leaves with today is, you can't underestimate leveraging your network. And those are going to be some of your biggest cheerleaders, and that's how I approached it as well. So I really reached out to my network, and tried to, see if that could, allow me to get a better shot at securing a position. And then one thing that I also realized during the process is that, a lot of it, not a lot of it, but I think a good amount of it is also scientific fit. So there are some job postings that you can get little clues about what the department is looking for specifically. And that could be a technology, a field that you're focused in. And that's also how I kind of narrowed stuff down. So I would look for, little keywords or descriptions of what the department was specifically looking for. And then I tried to match that either with my application materials or when I talked to people that were on the search committees or anything like that. So that's another thing you can also do is kind of just look for, they put little clues in there. And so you just got to kind of go through that and sift through that.
Just one thing that I want to add. So, again, for an institution like mine, that's not something that is a requirement. Nobody that came into this has come into my department since I've been here, and even the couple of years before me came in with funding when they got here. But one thing I will caution is that something that we tend to see a good bit when we have a job opening is that I think people maybe have a perspective of like, oh, okay, well, because I don't have, a K99, for example, I'm going to apply to this job because I'll be able to get it without funding. But they still approach the application and the job as if it would be the same, as if they were applying to an R1 institution. I'll put it that way. So it's very obvious in those applications that this person has no interest in teaching. They've never put any thought into it. Their research statement is written for an R1 institution. And it's like, you couldn't do that research here. We don't have that kind of capabilities. And that's going to immediately, we're going to discount that application. So that's something that's really important when you're looking at, job ads and like the type of job and what you're applying for, that really need to make sure that you're tailoring your application to that job, and not just treat, all institutions the same as far as your application goes. So.
Yeah, great. Thank you all so much. Okay, so next, moving on. Hannah has had her hand up. Hannah?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say thanks again for being here. I think this is such a good opportunity. But I just had a question, and this might be the wrong forum for it, but I have a background as a pharmacist. And I didn't find out my interest for research until after I graduated and I was already practicing as a pharmacist. So I've kind of gone back and I'm in a postdoc fellowship now that's funded by a private organization, the International Cannabis Research Society, and part of the clinics that I work in as well. So I guess my question is, how can I best leverage my background and my skills to try to apply for a position, and how can I get further into research without having a PhD?
So I'll say we have a school of pharmacy here at ISU, and within the School of Pharmacy, there is a Department of Biomedical and Pharmaceutical Sciences. And it's a fairly small department, but there's, it's faculty who teach pharmacy students and also do research in pharmacology. So those faculty, actually, there's a mix of faculty who have PhDs, and also some of them have PharmDs plus postdoc research experience that they leverage to, start their lab and run their lab. So, so there are positions like that available, and that's where you just have to, really spend a lot of time looking and seeing, what opportunities are out there. And again, it may not be from a perspective of just looking for job openings, right? You may have to be more focused and look at institutions, around the country. Where are there pharmacy schools? Is there research going on, like associated, with pharmacy or pharmacology? If that's your, research interest, you may be able to find these types of departments. And, then it's a matter of reaching out, looking, making contact with people who work in those departments, department chairs, and, try to figure out where there may be, opportunities. But, and I've seen that not only in this area, specifically. So I'm just thinking about someone that I know in my own field who was an MD, and then during his residency was like, I'm interested in doing some research, and he found a lab to like just go and do some work in, and didn't even have a formal postdoc, but just, got into doing research during his residency and was able to turn that into a very productive research career. So, depending on your situation, like a PhD isn't always necessary in order to get a faculty position.
Yeah, and Hannah, I would add to that too. If you haven't already, I definitely would ask around the faculty at School of Pharmacy and see if there's people in pharmacy now who are PharmDs who are running their own labs and are in those types of positions, and just start to build your network that way, because you're here on campus. That's an advantage that you have.
Yeah, and actually my mentor, so my PI that I'm working with, she is a PharmD as well. So I do have that connection, which is really great. There's just not a lot of us. So I've just been trying to learn everything as much as I can.
Yeah, it might be less common, but that doesn't mean it's not possible, for sure. So,
thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, Sarah, why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Hello. So I was wondering, from your guys' experience, either on the job market or like in your current position, can you explain some of the types of like funding situations for various institutions? I've heard of like instances where like you fund your whole salary through your grants, and then I've heard of others where you like do teaching for 9 months and then you only have to fund 3 months. So I'm just curious like what you've seen out there and what to expect.
So I interviewed at a few different places that had different expectations. I would say generally, if it's more of a medical center, you're probably going to be expected to cover a lot of your salary on grants. And then if you're going to an institution that prioritizes more teaching, more of your salary is covered because you're, putting your effort towards teaching. But it really just varies institution to institution, and it's something you kind of just have to ask when you get there and then weigh that into your decision. Because I've talked to people who have to cover, and it changes department to department too. Like at Colorado, it changes department to department. So I know people who cover 100% of their salary on grants. I know people who cover 20% of their salary on grants. And they're all happy. So I think you just have to figure out what you are comfortable living with.
For my institution and pretty much every institution that I interviewed with that was, at an R2 level, you have guaranteed 9-month contracts that is covered by the university because of our teaching. And that 9-month salary is like, so you have a 9-month contract and then that's distributed across 12 months. So there are some people who are perfectly happy with that, and they don't necessarily worry about covering summer salary because they get paid year round. But then if you have research grants, then you can pay yourself additional salary over the summer. There's also other opportunities to be able to supplement your 9-month contract. So, for example, I manage a institutional grant, and as part of that, the Office for Research covers a month of summer salary for me. Or some people will, want to teach a class over the summer, or if you take some other sort of administrative role, you may get, additional contract time for that. So it depends on how much you want to work over the summer too. I mean, depending on how much research you want to do. Most of the people in my department work year round, and we pay for ourselves in the summer through research. But not every department, is necessarily that way. And some people are perfectly happy with that 9-month salary and then having more time off in the summer.
Thank you.
Okay, great. We have a couple questions in the chat. So Jocelyn was asking, what aspects are typically lacking in candidates with a strong background in research when applying for faculty positions? And how do you recommend addressing them before entering the academic job market? And then there was a second question from Flavia on a similar vein, who asked, I'm curious if there are aspects of an application, aside from publication output, funding, and teaching, that would help an applicant stand out. So essentially, in a competitive job market, what can you do to maybe help yourself stand apart?
I can start with this from our perspective, or from a research heavy perspective. So, the easiest thing is publications, obviously, but yeah, like we're discussing here, aside from that, in my opinion, is really, and what I've learned through this experience is a couple things. So one is you really need to show your independence. So, generally when you're coming from a postdoc lab, you're trying to do a lot of high impact stuff, and a lot of that is from the track record of your PI from who is leading you during your postdoc. And so when you're transitioning, you really have to show the hiring committee that you have a plan to become independent, that you have a plan to make your own research program, your own niche, your own kind of way as you kind of establish yourself. And so I think I put a lot of emphasis in my application on that. And I think that's really important. And then the other thing too is, I really think it's important to be able to market yourself as someone who, has the ability to have a long, I don't know, how can I say this? Like, you have to show that you have longevity, right? So, that your program can be expansive. It's not just going to be something that's narrowly focused, that you have an ability to really grow as an independent scientist. And that's something that I think that was emphasized to me, as I said, by multiple people on hiring committees and my mentors as well. And so, that, and, in combination with who and the fit for the program, I think is going to be something that really drives your ability to kind of rise above. Remember, these hiring committees are looking at hundreds, even, I mean, I won't even say I would say at least hundreds of applications, right? And so, to really set yourself apart, I think, if you combine those two things, you show your fit is really unique for the department. Something is missing in the department, you are going to fill that. And then your ability to show that your program is independent and expansive, I think are two things that you can really drill down on. That'll make you, a very competitive candidate.
I'll just add on to that real quick. In all my applications, I tried to link what I was doing to what was already going on in the department, and specifically say, I will collaborate with XYZ, this person, on this, and this person on this, and that's why I'm a good fit. So I think there's like really obvious ways you can pull that out when you put the application materials together.
I agree. I think anytime that you can show through your materials that you have done your homework, that you know what that department is about, right? What their mission is, what do other people, study, what, why do you want to be in that department specifically at that institution? So that takes a lot of research on your part and thinking about how you can, tailor your materials to showcase that you are, the right person and a good fit for that specific position. I got a lot of advice when I was applying for jobs. People were like, you have to apply to 100 jobs if you're going to get one, and I'm like, there's no way I can apply to 100 positions, right? And do them well. So I think people have a strategy of like, I'm just going to have, my materials together, and then I'm just going to blast out as many applications as possible. And that's, from my perspective, that's not going to be as fruitful for you. And it's better to have a more narrowed focus, really look for the places where you would be a good fit, and then spend the time to really tailor your application for each of those positions. From a perspective of my type of institution, you really have to show that you understand what this type of job would be like. So your research material, your research statements, and I had to give a research talk when I interviewed, and you have to be very explicit about, here's the types of projects that we're going to be working on, and here is how I can actually do that research at this institution. Here's how I'm going to involve undergraduates in my research, and they can actually do this type of experiment. So showing that you have that understanding, that you will actually be prepared when you get here to be able to do research that you can be productive with in this environment. And also on the teaching side, your teaching philosophy statements are really important, and showing that even not everybody who came here had a lot of teaching experience before they came, but at least showing what you have done, what you've thought about it, how you would, how you would be, I guess, in your teaching space, and looking at the department and what types of courses do they teach, what types of things would you like to teach that they already offer, and also offer hey, here's this special thing that I have that I could develop a course in X that you don't already have that I think would complement your degree, things like that, where again you're showing that you have something unique that you are also bringing to the table. So having an understanding of what that department looks like, and how you would be a good fit. but in a different way.
Gonna piggyback off of that really quick. What I found myself doing was keeping a list of, okay, here are classes that I would love to create. I bet I could do, comparative vertebrate anatomy. I bet I could do a human evolution class. Like I could definitely teach like an intro bio. If you can't teach intro bio by the time you graduate, the system has failed you. So put that on your list. And then go through their course catalog. You can usually find them somewhere online and be like, oh, I could teach that. I could teach that. I could put that in your letter. Be like, and sometimes they'll ask for that with your teaching statement as well. What would you bring to the table? What would you be willing to, like, oh, if so-and-so wants to, go on sabbatical for a year, I would love to cover comparative vertebrate anatomy for them. But if there's space, once I've gotten my feet on the ground, I would love to develop a course in developmental genetics or whatever, have a list of that going. And that may not even be in your written materials, but when you get an on-campus interview, they may be like, so just spitballing, what would you like to teach? What could you teach? And you can pull that off the top of your head. Oh, I saw you have these classes, but you're missing one in, this realm that I could maybe develop something for. That's a good conversation starter, and it shows you're looking at that specific institution, because it's very obvious when your application does not match even the same realm as the institution itself.
All wonderful advice. Thank you all so much. I think we're going to try to squeeze in 2 last questions. So first, really quick, Skylar had asked a question earlier about sort of that, do you have to pick a lane? Do you have to pick research or teaching? So just one quick follow-up question that I think is generally helpful. So Skylar was saying that they have some teaching experience now as a graduate student. Do they need to do a postdoc if they wanted to go for a more teaching heavy position? I think if you want to go for a research heavy position, most people would say yes. I will say a caveat here, depending on your, everyone who's here in the audience, depending on your field, there are some fields where you can potentially go from a PhD directly into a faculty position. So it's field dependent. So I would say look around your department and look at the faculty in your department and see if they did postdocs. But if you are in a field where you feel like it is somewhat standard for someone to do a postdoc, I think the question is, do you think you could get a more teaching heavy faculty position without doing a postdoc first?
At my institution, no. So I think at an R2 institution where it is expected that you are teaching, but that you will have a research lab, they want to see that you have independence and that you've done a postdoc. But I have seen, so we have, in my department, we have a Doctor of Arts in biology, which used to be a big thing. And now I think we're one of only a couple programs still left in the country, but it's kind of a teaching and research combined degree that's a little bit different from a PhD. And so I see students who graduate with their DA. They do that specifically because they want to be at a teaching only institution. And so those students have been successful in getting jobs like right after graduation, but they are specifically at PUIs that don't have any research, that are 100% teaching. So there's really no, they're not looking for that additional level of research training. So that's my experience.
Most of the job positions, I threw this in the chat as well, but most of the positions that I've seen in my field request a year or 2 of postdoctoral teaching experience. That doesn't mean that has to be the only thing that you're doing. They just want to see that you've been an instructor of record and you know all of the craziness that, like, there's one thing to make and present lectures, but doing the behind the scenes of organizing a curriculum is an entirely different thing. And they want to see that you're not going to flounder hitting the ground. So I would say if you can fill in for classes like, hey, so-and-so is going to be gone for a conference next week. Do you mind if I guest lecture? Even that looks like something. But if you can get postdoctoral experience or that's obviously better, filling in maybe in between on a semester when you're doing lighter work, but trying to balance just coming in with any teaching experience at all, especially if you can be instructor on record, I think would look very good.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you both so much for those perspectives. And we'll ask one last question. So, Madhulika, if you're still here, do you want to ask your question?
Sure, thank you. So I have actually applied to one cycle and got nothing. I only applied to R1s, and I am international, so I have been limited to what I can apply in terms of grants. So my question, one is, I cannot apply K99. That was COVID time when I could have, and then it couldn't progress. Sometime it didn't work out, let's say. So K99 is not there. Do you know any other options that I can apply? Because I hear a lot that now for R1, if you don't have grant, it's very hard to get in because of funding scenario. And as an international for postdoc, also, I don't have any options to apply for grants and stuff. And second is maybe tricky question I am hearing is, again, even if the committee selects you because you are on visa, administration is kind of pushing back because of all H1B. So any comments and how to progress is kind of, yeah.
I would say in terms of if you're interested in looking for funding, there, at least in the breast cancer field, there are foundations that prioritize sort of funding that transition. So there might be some for other fields as well. So I would look into foundation funding. Like I think Susan G. Komen, for instance, might be putting some money towards that this year. But in terms of visa status, I haven't heard of it being a problem here at Pitt. I'm guessing that's gonna vary institution to institution. But I would assume if a committee selects a candidate, no matter where they're from, and says this is the person that we want to hire, the institution should say yes. You know, that's part of having an equitable job search, which is a big deal for institutions to have. But I haven't been on any search committees myself yet, so I could be completely off target on that.
No, I agree with Michelle. I think you know, if you find a department that you're going to be a great fit for and they want you, they will figure it out. So I think I mean, obviously this is a, you know, a little bit more difficult for you to try to you know, find something that fits because you're already at a narrow kind of field to look at. But like I would just try to do as much homework as possible, really get into what each department is looking for, what the makeup of the faculty is as well. And then I would start reaching out to individuals in the department and see, you know, one, are you going to be a good fit? Two, how do they go about some of these situations? Because some will be candid about it, depending on obviously who you're reaching out to. But I think for you, your main kind of goal or strategy would be to kind of dig a little bit deeper and really try to find these departments that would be more accommodating to your situation, and that, you know, you really find a good fit, and that way they will find a way to overcome any kind of difficulties that you might have to face.
Yeah, thank you both so much. And it's 10:57, so we're approaching the end of our time, and I want to respect our panelists' time, so I don't want to go over time. Just a couple last plugs for everyone who is here. I put in the chat, we do have 2 other seminars this month for academic April. One is about planning a strategic postdoc. So if you are a PhD student or a master's student thinking about a PhD in the future, really thinking about how can we pick and design a postdoc to get us to where we want to be. So that's what that is going to be about. And then we also have another seminar next week from a faculty member about sort of like from the search committee side of things, what did they look for when they are reviewing faculty applications? So I think a lot of you who are wondering, like, how do I tailor my application? How do I stand out? That would be a great session for you to attend as well. And then, of course, I always encourage everyone to reach out and make those connections, you know, network, as we say. So I think if you found advice from the faculty members especially helpful today, it'd be great to maybe reach out to them on LinkedIn or send them an email and just thank them for their time. And if you had questions you weren't able to ask, that would be a great way to maybe follow up with them as well. And to our panelists, thank you again so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. This was incredibly informative, and I know I got a lot of it, and I'm sure the audience did as well. So thank you so
Can
much.
I say one quick thing?
Yes, of course, of course.
I relied on the Career Development Office a lot when I was going
thank you.
through my transition, especially when I was figuring out how to negotiate, which I had never really done before. I think Bruce Mant like helped me write negotiation letters and like reviewed them for me. So definitely use the Career Development Office. It's a very nice place, very nice people, but also not all institutions have a resource like that. So make sure that you continue to take advantage.
Thank you. Thank you for the plug. All right. Thank you all again so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.